All right, again, welcome to Increasing Product Specifications with EPDs, HPDs, and LCAs. This is sponsored by Elixir Environmental and Vertima. Today's webinar is hosted by Green CE, and I am Devotion Phillips, your moderator. Let me introduce you to the people we have, the experts we have today. So Jose Lupien has over 20 years of experience in architectural specifications. Through the years, collaboration with architects, sustainable design professionals, and decision makers has allowed her to become actively involved in greening the construction industry. Now, in 2016, Jose was awarded the Lead Fellow title, the highest international award in the green building sector, by the Green Business Certification Institute for her exceptional involvement in the development of the green building sector. Jose currently serves as an active member of the third-party verification technical subgroup for the HPD Collaborative. Tara Blank has an HPD in biology with emphasis in environmental sciences and toxicology. Tara is the founder of Elixir Environmental, which works exclusively with building product manufacturers to develop health product declarations, declare labels, and other transparency documentation. She's worked closely with architects, sustainable design professionals, scientists, and environmental advocates on various projects. Tara currently serves as the chair of the HPD Collaborative Content Inventory Technical Subgroup and as an active member of the third-party verification technical subgroup. She also volunteers for the Mindful Materials Review Working Group. I'm going to now turn over the webinar to Jose and Tara, and they are going to begin explaining about what all those things mean.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for participating to our webinar. Just a little description behind who we are, Vertima. Since 2008, Vertima has been a trust leader in third-party environmental certification with our head office located in Canada. We have a global reach, and our services can be offered in English, French, and Spanish. Vertima has developed the validated eco-declaration certification in connection with green building and related materials requirements, such as LEED certification. Here are the different services that Vertima can provide: life cycle assessment, environmental product declaration, health product declaration. Actually, Vertima is the only Canadian company recognized by HPD Collaborative as an approved verifier. We can also declare certification, recycle content. So overall, we can also provide environmental data sheets. Our validated eco-declaration meets the requirements to many green building certifications, such as LEED v4, WELL, and Living Building Challenge. So Tara?
Okay, fantastic. Our focus here is mostly on material health and disclosure. And as Devotion mentioned, we work with building product manufacturers to develop disclosure documentation. Over the past several years, health product declarations have by far been the most requested service that we offer. We've been heavily involved with the HPD Collaborative for a number of years, so we're very well informed of most everything that's going on in that realm. Beyond HPDs, we also encourage our clients to promote their products with other platforms and programs like Mindful Materials, Google PORTICO, and ILFI, which we also help manufacturers to complete. We work to develop LEED documentation as well for building products, and work with our affiliate company, Green CE, to create, host, and present AIA and GBCI continuing education courses for our clients. Okay, so let's jump right in. I'll start with an overview of what's happening out there in the real world with this push for increased product transparency. Now, the documents that we'll be looking at today, life cycle assessments, environmental product declarations, and health product declarations, require a pretty detailed level of disclosure of both a product's environmental impacts as well as material ingredients and associated hazards. Now, these types of disclosures are becoming much more commonplace. and are starting to be not just requested, but actually expected from building product manufacturers. Now, the latest version of LEED, LEED v4, has been one of the biggest drivers of product transparency for the building industry. LEED v4 includes credits that emphasize and encourage product transparency and disclosure, both for environmental attributes as well as for human health effects. The WELL building standard focuses on human health and wellness, as its name implies. Even though it's relatively new to the industry, it seems to be picking up speed pretty quickly. WELL includes several features that specify criteria for products, including VOC reduction, toxic material reduction, enhanced material safety, and of course, material transparency, which can be achieved with CRADLE-to-GATE, Declare, or the Health Product Declaration. Now, the Living Building Challenge is another building standard that is pushing the market towards this increased product transparency. I think probably they're most familiar for their Declare label, which supports selection of products for LBC projects. But these are also being requested by design firms who are not actively involved in LBC projects, but still want that same level of information. The American Institute of Architects has also jumped on the bandwagon, making a push for material transparency with the release of their position statement, now back in 2014, part of which reads, "The AIA encourages architects to promote transparency in materials contents and in their environmental and human health impacts." Now, I'm sure that most of you have seen these already, or at least heard of them. A number of the top design firms in the country have taken it upon themselves to start requesting transparency documentation such as EPDs and HPDs by sending letters directly to building product manufacturers saying that they won't even consider specifying products unless they're able to provide this type of documentation. Now, quite a few of these design firms have also begun to integrate transparency into their core values and standard operations. So we see this with firms like Sarah Architects, which was actually one of the founding endorsers of the Health Product Declaration. Perkins & Will, which maintains an extensive precautionary list of chemicals. And Smith Group, JJR, which was developed the first library for housing health product declarations. So with that in mind, let's circle back to LEED. I'm going to turn it over to Jose, who will introduce you to some of the credits that are related to these documents that we're discussing today.
So yeah, so thank you, Tara. Let's move on to explain a little bit deeper the interpretation under the LEED v4 certification, which was launched by the US CDC in November 2014. This LEED v4 version has been adapted for green building international market, and LEED is present in over 150 countries, so it's really becoming the reference in the green building industry. So there are now 21 different rating systems divided into 5 large families to meet a variety of building types, such as new construction, core and shell, data center, hospitality, even warehouse and distribution center could be LEED certified now. For sure, healthcare, school, home and existing building, neighborhood development, retail, and commercial interior. So next. The major changes, as probably you all know, are under material and resources category. So before starting, it's really important to note that the products are never LEED certified, but may contribute to LEED requirements. So it's really the buildings that are receiving the LEED certification. The most significant changes in LEED v4 are definitely in the material and resource category, mainly because the achievement of previous LEED requirements for materials had become easily attainable. So it's no longer a question of considering only the attributes of a product, such as recycled content or FSC would certify, but rather to consider environmental impact. In addition, LEED v4 focused on the transparency of manufacturers and benefits those who make environmental statements by independent third parties rather than self-declaration. The top credits, the top 3 credits named Building, Product Disclosure, and Optimization address the LEED goals of material transparency in order to optimize the materials you use to minimize impact on both health and environment. So overall, the 3 Building, Product Disclosure, and Optimization credits are aimed at promoting transparency of product supply chains, ingredients, and life cycle impacts, as well as optimization of material used. As you can see, each of these credits can contribute up to 2 points. So a project team can either achieve 1 point with option 1 and or another point with option 2. There is a reason why these credits have been defined by 2 dominant terms, so disclosure and optimization. Disclosure means transparency of product supply chains, ingredients, and life cycle impacts, and optimization seeks to reward products that have met thresholds or benchmarks for performance based on impact categories. So, but how do we know where to set benchmarks or thresholds for performance without knowing about our products? So that's why transparency and optimization go hand in hand. Option 1 is really for each of these credits, considering the metric of number of products. So this is a new metric in LEED v4, and each Building, Product Disclosure, and Optimization credit has different weightings for a product depending on the stringency of the transparency program. So to achieve the point in option 1, so all the structure will be the same. The project should have at least 20 products from 5 different manufacturers. And to achieve the point in option 2, the metric for this credit is cost, so rather than number of products. So the same structure as we had in the whole LEED version. All these credits, it's important to consider what constitutes a product. Next. So how to define a product? LEED defines products by the functional requirements for use in the project. So in other words, a product is defined by serving a distinct function. This includes the physical components and services needed to serve the intended function of the permanently installed building product. Similar products from the same manufacturer can be counted as separate products if they have distinct formulations, but not if they are aesthetically variation or reconfiguration. As examples, paint finishes have 3 different functions. So if we have in the project gloss, flat, and semi-gloss paint, it means that it will be calculated as 3 products out of 20. But on the other hand, if it's a white and green paint with the same finish, so it will be calculated as 1 out of 20 products. Another example is if we have our project side chair and office chairs, as they are specific for 2 different functions, it will be calculated as 2 out of 20 products. So it's really important to be aware of calculation during the calculation process, what is what. Next. here is the list of the 3 building product disclosure optimization credits with options 1 and 2. It's all the same structure for all these 3 credits. And it's interesting to have an overview that Building Green and USGBC have done. It's really about the evaluation of actually the feasibility of each of these credits. So let's see on the left side with the EPD option 1, Environmental Product Declaration option 1. For now, it's an easy credit to achieve. Again, you do need to have 20 products from at least 5 different manufacturers to achieve this credit. But on the other hand, option 2, the focus is on optimization. So for now, it's not an achievable credit at this time. Mainly because the goal of this credit is to select products that perform better than their LCA industry average and at least in 3 impact categories. So as we don't have that many EPDs from the industry, so that's why it's a very hard credit to achieve for the moment. The second credit, sourcing of raw materials, option 1. Again, it's not really achievable at this time. And because mainly it needs to have in a full project over 20 products that come from a manufacturer who have their corporate sustainability reports. And also these reports should come from 5 different manufacturers. Regarding option 2, the optimization credit, it's for now doable, which is a good thing. Because it's kind of the last credit we had in the whole version with recycled content, wood certified. So actually, it's a credit that could be achievable. And the only thing is for all option 2, the calculation is based on cost. It's different than the number of products, but we do not have anymore the extracted location, but it's just a bonus as far as we have extracted, manufactured, and purchased materials that comes from 100 miles from the project location. It's the radius from the project location. So then they will be valued at 200% of their cost. So it's just a bonus. And moreover, for all the structure and enclosure materials, they may not contribute more than 30% of the value of the compliant building products. So again, it's a kind of difficult way to achieve that credit. So the third credit, material ingredients, it's for now easy to achieve option 1. Mainly because we do need to have material ingredient reporting. So again, we need to have 20 products from 5 different manufacturers that demonstrate the chemical inventory of the products for at least 1,000 ppm disclosure. But to get an extra point, which is actually not really achievable, we need to disclose, again, the chemical ingredients to 100 ppm and have no benchmark 1 hazard. So I would like to present you more information about the Environmental Product Declaration credit. So let's start with the definition of what is an EPD. It's a report describing your product's potential environmental impact. So the intent for use in business-to-business communication and can also be used in business-to-consumer communication. It is interesting when a manufacturer has the environmental profile of its products because it's showing what environmental impacts could be improved. As example, reducing global warming potential. So, it's not just by contributing to LEED points. It's really about trying to reduce the environmental impact of a product. So to be able to provide an EPD, we should start first with the life cycle assessment of the product. So the life cycle assessment is a scientific technique used to compare all relevant energy material inputs and environmental releases from your product from cradle to gate or cradle to grade. The life cycle assessment evaluates the potential impacts associated with these inputs and releases. And the LCA looks at everything that was needed to produce your product from raw material extraction to the gate of your manufacturing plant, and in the case of a cradle to gate life cycle assessment. But it could also include usage and end-of-life interaction with the environment in the case of a cradle-to-grave life cycle assessment. So to know which environmental impacts to assess, if you need a cradle-to-gate or a cradle-to-grave assessment, you need to follow the rules set out by the program operator of the group of products. So they will have a guide called product category rules that we will have to follow. So as EPDs are based on LCA and on the ISO 14024-25 standard, LCA is the compilation and evaluation of the inputs, outputs, and the potential environmental impacts of a product system throughout its life cycle. The life cycle is based on the standard ISO 14044. And yeah, we should absolutely start and to get an EPD with the PCR that are setting the rules and the requirements and are the guidelines for developing EPD. So I just would like to give a little bit more details on the option 1 for EPDs. So as we have mentioned before, we need to have 20 products from at least 5 different manufacturers. And actually, there are 3 different EPDs that we will have to go through and validate and do the calculation that will be different weight in terms of how much they count towards credit compliance. So let's start with the first one. The product-specific declarations are for products with publicly available, critically reviewed life cycle assessment, again conforming to ISO 14044, and they should have at least a cradle-to-gate scope. It includes material processing from raw material extraction to final product for sales, but excludes transportation from the factory to distribution locations. So the next one is published industry-wide or generic EPDs. So there are products with third-party Type 3 declaration, including external verification, and in which the manufacturer is recognized by the program operator. So finally, product-specific Type 3 ED environmental product declaration have the same attributes as generic EPDs, but are done for a specific product rather than being at industry average. Absolutely, product-specific Type 3 declaration represents the highest level because they are both externally verified and specific to a product, and particular manufacturer generic EPDs are still externally verified but are not specific to a product. Here are examples of, on the left side, the specific product-specific EPD, and it will be specified at the top of the documentation if it's an industry-wide EPD. So to achieve the EPD credit, we would need 40 industry-wide EPDs or a combination of specific and or industry-wide EPDs. As you can see, the market is really moving forward with EPDs, and especially in California. Last fall, with the government Jerry Brown's signature on IB 262, the Buy Clean California became the first jurisdiction on Earth to address imported carbon emissions. So with AB 262, all public contracts must respect the Buy Public Clean Act policy. And well, for sure, the state's goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So what it means, there's a listing. If you're curious, you may go on internet and look at the AB 262 documentation. So all carbon steel rebar, flat glass, mineral wool, structural steel, they should all have their environmental product declaration type 3 to be eligible to be part of the project. It's interesting to look at the difference between an environmental product declaration and a health product declaration. So the EPD describes the environmental impact profile of a product, and the HPD is really about the human toxicity and the ecotoxicity of a product. So these two reports are complementary.
Okay, so I think that brings me to my part. Yeah, so and it brings us to a different building product disclosure and optimization credit, the one for material ingredients. This is the one that specifically references the HPD. So I will start off by talking about what the HPD is and what it does, and then we will circle back to this credit. All right, so the HPD was developed specifically for the building industry as a way to standardize material ingredient reporting. It gives information about a product's contents, as well as any health hazards that might be associated with those contents. And the goal being to allow designers and specifiers to make more informed decisions when selecting building products. So these are the sections that make up the HPD: summary, contents, certifications and compliance. Then you have room for accessory materials, extra notes, and then the last section, which is the references, is where the information is listed about you, the manufacturer, as well as the person who was responsible for the HPD and who could answer questions regarding the HPD. I won't have time to get into too much detail about these different sections today, but if you want more in-depth information, there is an AIA GBCI continuing education course available for free on Green CE that we developed pretty recently with the HPD Collaborative. So go check that out for more information. I will talk a bit about section 2 of the HPD, since that's the part that lists product contents. That includes the substance name, CAS number, along with the role, percent by weight. Now, section 2 is pretty important for project teams that are reviewing products, since this is where the associated hazards are listed. These hazards are based on information from numerous priority hazard lists that the HPD Collaborative has decided are important. Some of these include US EPA, European Commission, the CDC, California's Prop 65, and of course these lists are continually being updated as research on these chemicals continues. Now, in addition to associated hazards, the HPD also reports what's called a green screen score for each chemical that's been reviewed. A green screen is a hazard assessment methodology that assigns chemicals to one of 4 benchmarks based on best available data. So starting at the bottom, benchmark 1 in red, these are those chemicals of high concern that should be avoided whenever possible. So you don't want a whole bunch of benchmark 1 chemicals in your product, or any at all if possible. Moving up through benchmark 2 and benchmark 3, these are getting safer, but there's still room for improvement. And then benchmark 4 in green at the top, these are considered the safer chemicals, ones that are preferred to be used in products because of their long track record of safety. Now, the HPD Builder, which is the simplest and most straightforward way to create an HPD, is available through the HPD Collaborative's website, which I have listed here at the bottom of the slide. The HPD Builder is directly linked to the Pharos Chemical and Material Library, which is run by the Healthy Building Network. Now, HBN has an absolutely amazing staff that is tirelessly working to research more and more of these chemicals. And the results in Pharos, including the green screen score and any associated hazards, automatically populate in the HPD when the chemical or substance is entered into the HPD builder. So this really is a fantastic way to get your HPDs done. All right, so let's get back to that lead credits. I know that was a quick overview, but you'll get a little bit more detail here as we walk through the credit. The health product declaration is specifically referenced by lead before as being able to contribute to this credit that we saw previously, the building product disclosure and optimization, material ingredients. And this credit is divided into 3 parts. HPDs can be used to fulfill the requirements for option 1 and option 2. So option 1 is for material ingredient reporting. Option 2 is for optimization. So as Jose mentioned already, option 1 requires that project teams use at least 20 different permanently installed products from at least 5 different manufacturers that provide a chemical inventory of the product down to at least 0.1% or 1,000 parts per million, using one of the approved programs, one of which, of course, is the Health Product Declaration. Now, for option 2 of the credit, optimization, project teams must use products that document their material ingredient optimization using one of several paths for at least 25% by cost of the total value of permanently installed products. So let's take a look at the requirements to qualify for each of these options when using the HPD. Now, the overall requirement for using HPDs for this lead credit is that the HPD must be complete as per the HPD open standard and must be published in the HPD public repository, which I'll show you in a minute. Now, for an HPD to meet the requirements for the lead MR credit, the threshold level must be at least 1,000 parts per million for option 1 and at least 100 parts per million for option 2. All right, next, all substances above the declared threshold must be characterized, must be screened for hazards, but this last one, identified, can actually either be yes or no, and that's in part because the HPD allows manufacturers to withhold the identity of any substances that they consider proprietary information. Now, specifically for option 2 of this credit, the optimization part, if all substances have a full green screen assessment and there are no benchmark 1 substances present, then that product can be valued at 150% of cost. Products for which any of their contents are assessed with the green screen list translator, these can be valued at 100% of cost, as long as there are no LT1 or LTP1 scores. All right, so the lead pre-check is an optional mechanical cross-check that is newly available, or somewhat newly available, in version 2.1 of the HPD to determine whether all the required fields have been completed and whether the basic requirements have been met. So we love the pre-check, but do keep in mind that it cannot verify that the information provided in the HPD is accurate. All right, so once you've completed your HPD, it needs to be published. The HPD Open Repository is free for both creators and users of HPD, but if an HPD is not present in the repository, it's not actually considered published and will not qualify for the lead credits. Now, as of yesterday, when I last looked, there were nearly 3,900 HPDs published to the repository, and that number is growing every day. As I mentioned, a number of the top design firms are not just requesting, but requiring that manufacturers have documentation like HPDs available for their products. But if these HPDs have been done incorrectly or incompletely, they won't qualify for the lead credits. Having an HPD available at all is a great first step towards transparency and disclosure. But obviously, having a LEED compliant HPD is preferable. And while the LEED pre-check available now through the builder is a great initial screening method, it is only a mechanical check, which means that there's the possibility for error. So with all of the HPDs available, and with so many claiming to be LEED compliant, the best way to stand out and prove that your HPD is both complete and LEED compliant is to have it third-party verified. Now, right now, there are only a limited number of verified HPDs, but we're expecting that number to grow pretty quickly. HPD verification has only been available for a short time so far, but the program has already garnered quite a bit of attention. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jose to discuss the program in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Tara. So yeah, as mentioned, the HPDC verification program was launched this year in January. So the main reason why HPD Collaborative came on board with this program is to enable manufacturers to work with independent verifiers, well, for sure to ensure that the EPDs they have created are compliant with the HPD open standards. It's also to underpinned by the credibility of the HPD open standard and the expertise of the third-party verifiers. So there's two ways that you may have a third-party verified HPD. First, could be a self-prepared by a manufacturer HPD, or it could be professionally prepared by an external consultant. So in both cases, the verifier will do an audit to obtain a verified HPD. It's absolutely impossible if you have prepared your own HPD, it won't be stamped as a verified HPD. So when you have an HPD verified status, so the information will be available to user on the summary page, the first page at the bottom, as you can see here. And you will have the third-party verification name. It will provide a level of quality assurance to reassuring to design professionals, and particularly important when an HPD contains undisclosed materials. Yeah, we have received some comments from professionals that they feel more confident in selecting products and materials that have been completed, vetted by knowledgeable and unbiased verifiers.
Okay, I think that's mine again. Thank you, Jose. Okay, so you've gone through the trouble of getting all your transparency documents in order. You have them completed, you have them verified, you have them published. So now what? Well, the most obvious place to put all of these documents is on your own website, which is great. But if you want to get specified, you need to get in front of as many designers as possible. And there are a number of platforms available that are quickly becoming the go-to places for design teams to find products with transparency documentation. So Google, I'm sure you have all heard of Google, has one such platform. They began evaluating all of the building products and materials that are to be used on their design and construction projects around the world, with a focus on transparency and material health. And when you consider that Google buys, builds, or leases over 100,000 square feet of property every week somewhere on the planet, you can imagine the impact that this will have. And some of you may have already received requests to put your information in their PORTICO platform. So to evaluate products, Google assigns scores based on the level of transparency and material health. So PORTICO requests a lot of the same information that's in an HPD, but also asks for additional information if you have it available, such as the results of your life cycle assessment. So Google's global design and construction teams use the product scores that result from these evaluations to guide their material selection process. And there is a minimum score that you must receive on Portico to even be considered by the Google teams. Now, another platform that is available is Mindful Materials. HKS was responsible for launching the Mindful Materials Transparency Initiative, which included this label. And it really started a flood of activity among design firms. Since then, Mindful Materials has evolved into a library, which is a searchable database for sustainable products. Now, the Mindful Materials Library is powered by Origin, which is the portal for getting your products into the Mindful Materials Library. Now, pretty much anybody can add their product information to Origin, but there are specific requirements to be moved from Origin to the Mindful Materials Library, including having certain kinds of disclosure documentation, as well as going through a review by the Mindful Materials Review Working Group. Now, Origin also serves as the platform for Vertima's Certified Product Directory. And Jose, I'm going to let you speak to that a little bit more.
Thank you. So yes, absolutely, thank you. All building products certified by Vertima are included in our directory and integrated into the Origin Materials and Mindful Materials platforms. They are all connected. It's the same structure. So as mentioned, Tara, the searchable database are making documentation for certified products more readily available to the design and specification community. Yeah, it's a big advantage for a manufacturer to include your product documentation in these platforms. One more tool that I would like to present is in connection with the green building industry and architects and designer needs. Vertima has developed an environmental data sheet with the validated Eco Declaration certification. So this is an exclusive tool for our clients, summarizing the overall environmental product analysis and certifications, as well as its contribution to LEED v4 credits or any other green building certification. Actually, the environmental data sheet summarizes each environmental report, like HPD, EPD, CDPH emission testing, or other environmental information of the company, such as corporate sustainability report, take-back program, or ISO 14000. The environmental data sheet has become over the years a reference document for the design and specification community, especially because they are saving a lot of time by having all information in one document. So each EDS could evolve over the years. As an example, if a manufacturer begins with a HPD or even a recycled content certification, as soon as there is any other product environmental analysis completed, it could be added to the information to the existing environmental data sheet. What is also interesting, even if we haven't prepared the HPD or if you do already have your EPD, so we don't have to be the firm that prepare the documentation. We can still include your actual documentation. As far as we have validated the veracity of the compliance of each report, we can absolutely produce an EDS and with our validated Eco Declaration certification. We can even provide this documentation in English, French, and Spanish. Probably the most interesting for architects is really about the section in our environmental data sheet that includes the product LEED v4 credit contribution or any other green building certification compliance, like on the right side, the WELL environmental data sheet. So this is the LEED v4 documentation, and it's very, again, helpful for the LEED project team during their material selection and specification. And moreover, it's also a tool that general contractors are using. one more thing, the manufacturer's architectural representative could also use these environmental data sheets for their architect presentations, and it's a really interesting education tool. So just to have an overview of what we just discussed, how to connect your products to green projects. So personally, what I really care about with each client is to ensure from the beginning a good planning as to how their reports will be presented in the market. The most important thing when a manufacturer decides to move forward and to opt for EPDs, HPD, or even environmental data sheets, they need to put in place a global strategy to maximize their return on investment. Just for example, put in place a communication plan to promote your commitment to the transparency movement. Also, identified architect firms that are looking for EPD, HPD, and environmental data sheets. Do not target only lead projects, mainly because these requirements are becoming the rule. Also, take into consideration to train your sales team. It's really important to make sure they have a good understanding of the lead before and the materials requirements. If you do have an architectural spec rep, they should have absolutely training and become comfortable talking about your HPD and your EPD. Make sure to integrate this documentation into your website and also to link all your documentation to the main platform that we just presented. In summary, it's clear that your actions must be aligned with the sincere intentions to participate in the change towards or more sustainable market. Companies must see this is a major shift, and there are no wrong ways to do things. For sure, we can, Tara and I, help you to understand the green building market and work with you to define your needs. And absolutely, each action brings more power to the vision of a more sustainable market. We'll let you, Devotion, take the next step of the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jose and Tara. I really appreciate your time. Now, we have time for some question and answers with everybody. I've already got a couple of questions set up. But please, by all means, feel free to ask more questions in the questions box. That way I can give them to Tara and Jose as we go. If we do not have time to get to them, please know that we will, as long as you provided us your information, get back to you via email so that all your questions can be answered. So the first one is for Tara, and it's a doozy, so I hope you're prepared. I had somebody who was asking about proprietary information in HPDs and having to disclose everything, especially in Lead V4, expecting all hazards to be disclosed. So the question for you, Tara, is pretty simple. If they have to disclose all the hazards, how do you keep things proprietary?
That's probably the biggest question, the most common question that we get about HPDs. And I touched on it briefly in the presentation. So you do need to, in order to be LEED compliant, you do need to screen all of your chemicals and substances for hazards. It needs to include the green screen score and any hazards that are listed as per the HPD priority hazard lists. It also needs to include a percentage. If part of the proprietary information is the exact percentage, you can use a range. And it also needs to include the role of the chemical or substance, so the function in the product. We like you to be as specific as possible, but if you need to be a little bit more generic to keep your secrets, then that's allowable to a certain degree. But it is possible to keep the actual chemical name and CAS number undisclosed on the HPD. There really are two different types of proprietary information that we deal with when talking about HPDs. There's the information that you as a manufacturer have and don't want to share. That's pretty easy. You already have the information, you can screen it and then hide the name and CAS number. When it gets a little bit more difficult is when your upstream suppliers have information that they don't want to share with you. That is a little bit more problematic. We can often help out as an outside consultant, signing non-disclosure agreements directly with your upstream suppliers to get the information on the chemicals and substances, screen for hazards, and then only present that information in the HPD without actually revealing the proprietary information. So I hope that cleared it up at least a little bit. If not, we can follow up offline.
Awesome. Okay, so I have one more HPD, and it looks like we have a EPD. So Jose, get ready. So for the HPD, actually, this is for both of you. If you could clarify this, because the question's almost the same. With an HPD or an EPD, I have somebody asking, they have multiple different products, but they're very, very similar. If that's the case, do you have to have an HPD or an EPD for each and every product? Can you lump them together? How does that work?
Yeah, maybe I can answer, Tara, about the EPD. Yeah, that's important to consider if it's the same function. So when you are moving forward to have your EPD, first thing is you need to look at the PCR rules as I presented. And then let's say, even if you have also that product manufactured in different manufacturing locations, so what is maybe, I would say 80% of the time, because of the PCR, we are allowed to present different products in the same EPD, which means that we are providing the average of the environmental impact of the product. So actually, at the right beginning, what we used to do is we're looking at the different product category that you're looking for. And for sure, we're trying to include in one documentation as much as we can, because you will have lower costs by not paying for two different EPD reports, because the cost is mainly per EPD, and also per EPD you do have to review by another third party. So yeah, that's something we could do, absolutely. And again, it's all based on the PCR. But I do have also on the call, we didn't mention, we do have our...
Oh, Jose, I'm so sorry, you're cutting out a bit.
Sorry, I do have on the phone also my life cycle analyst on the Chantal Laving. So if we need more details, we can also ask Chantal.
Okay, so we have maybe an expert on LCA as well?
Yes, we do have Chantal on the call. I'm sorry, we didn't present Chantal at the beginning of the presentation. But Tara, maybe you can also talk about on the HPD.
Yeah, absolutely. So for HPDs, it's a somewhat similar situation. You have the ability to include multiple products on a single HPD if they meet certain criteria. So they need to be functionally similar. They need to be covered by the same certifications and compliance. So say if you have, Green Guard Gold or another certification like that, and then they all have to have either the same material ingredient content or differ by no more than 10%. So say you had, a wall panel that was, pretty much the same, but you have a range of colors or you have a range of textures. You can include all of those in the same HPD as long as they meet all of those criteria.
Excellent, thank you. So for the LCA, it looks like we have some confusion. Could we do the best summary of what is needed for an LCA?
Yeah, do you want to answer, Chantal?
Yep.
As far as we have you on the call, that would be great.
All right. So I am Chantal Laving, and what you need for an LCA is often an annual average of your production. So every material that is needed to produce your product, every emissions that come out if you need to report your CO2 emissions, your water treatment. So it's really a picture of everything that's happening in your plant. And then we need sufficient information to be able to take into account all the raw material that comes into your product. So specifics on what they are. So I guess that's the big picture of it.
No, that's excellent. Thank you so much.
And just keep in mind that if you just want to do your life cycle assessment, it's great. But if you're thinking about achieving also the environmental product declaration report, you need to have the PCR at the right beginning, because it will set up the rules. And for sure, to get your EPD, you need to have the PCR.
Okay. Well, thank you very much to our experts. I'm going to go ahead and close us out. We do have a few more questions left, and we will get to those via email. So I apologize for not having the time, but the ladies do have to go and do their jobs now. So thank you very much, experts, for the time that you gave us today. We're going to send out an email to all attendees, including the recording of this webinar, because I know some of you were asking about that earlier. There's a handout and some contact information for the presenters so that you can access them via email. Thank you so much again for attending, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.